Real true education, not fake news. It's the 28th of October 2020. You're welcome back. This is a very short introduction to the 13 series. These videos in 13 are about environmental law and planning. And the ones made prior to 13D are on the EIA and various other things. I suggest you don't look at them. I also suggest that people who are not interested and are not immediately facing planning don't look at them either. They're going to give me damage my channel because people will say I've got sick looking at them, and then they won't look at anything else. So only look at it if you have an interest in it. But I'm inundated with requests for information. Now I reiterate again that I'm not your lawyer and you're not my client, but I can only do my best. I can't be held liable for information I give or how it's used. I do my best. However, the law belongs to everybody, and I'm entitled to give it out when it suits us, because when it doesn't suit us, it certainly will be used against us. Now, what happened was, I had been campaigning along with a few other people, an engineer from Dublin and a few other people, to get the proper law enforced on European law. And there's a consultant who does planning down in Port Harlington, a very nice man, and he did the same. But we all came up against the same thing. We couldn't get lawyers to push it all the way. It was expensive. I went to the High Court twice, and I couldn't get beyond that. You need lawyers to go into the European Court of Justice. I think any solicitor will actually do. But we're unlucky we had no one. Moreover, there were a good few other consultants, and they didn't agree with the Strategic Environmental Assessment Directive at all. However, everything has changed with the judgment. It's 24/19 recently, which ruled that the guidelines in 2006 setting out what has to be done for wind farms, the setback distance, the noise, the shadow flicker, and all that. These were challenged in the Belgian court. Their equivalent in Belgium was challenged, and as a result, the European Court gave a ruling at long last. They can't do any kind of regulation or any kind of guideline or anything else without doing the SCA. If the people doing it are the authority or a local council or a local government or the national government, as it is in Ireland, this is the Department of Energy in Ireland. If they have authority to do it, there has to be an SCA, and if planning permission is granted under it, the SCA will mean, without the SCA being done, which it isn't done for onshore wind, if the planning permission isn't granted, the court has to annul it, strike it down. So we're using that, we're getting going on now. There's a few things in the pipeline here, we'll be busy, and I'll be busy. But the question comes in then about the pylons, and if you look here, 13, this is 13DA. I had to stick in one for the introduction. If you look then at 13D and E, they're about windmills, wind farms, but that's all right. But here's the number of the case, and then 13E, F, and G would relate more to the pylons, the north-south interconnector. So what I suggest, and it's amazing how many people want to know the situation, you cannot explain the law on these matters to a person in a wink of an eye. You can't do it in a sudden. It's quite an involved thing. And I've made these videos so people can sit down. Now, I know people don't have much time, but if people are looking at old codology on the telly and old cooking programs and old nonsense, well, if they put that before the effort I put into this, well, then they deserve to have pylons. In all fairness, you have to make a bit of a sacrifice, and you have to strain their brain a bit and try and find out what it's all about and what's going on. Essentially, I'm only fairly good on the SCA, the EIA, and Planning and Development Act. And we have been saying for all this, if you have a public plan or programme, such as the National Renewable Energy Action Plan or the Wind Farm Plan, you have to run it through an SCA. And that means that everyone has a right to participate. There has to be an engineering dimension to it. They have to show why it's needed. And there has to be public participation. Everyone can make a submission. And then you can take it to the High Court and to the Court of Justice if they don't do it in accordance with the regulations. That's the law. That's the EIA directive. You can check it online, it's there for you. If you go into the version on Curia, C-U-R-I-A, you should get it there. Okay? Now, if you have any trouble, get back to me, I'll do what I can. Then there's the EIA directive, there's a local planning local project, and then there's the Planning and Development Act on which the EIA, the Environmental Impact Assessment, rests. This is some stuff. Some people can't understand that, and some people will not understand it, and some people will not hire lawyers or anything else. The issue of hiring lawyers, I'm looking to see, can we hire lawyers, and who can we recommend lawyers, or what to do with that if they want to ever go ahead. There'll be plenty of time, because I'd say the pylons mightn't start till January, and I'd say they'll be going on for 2 years. So I think when people see the digging in the fields, they'll realise it's coming their way. Now, by the way, you needn't be going in about talking about the right of EirGrid to enter land. EirGrid has the right to enter land if they're a public body like EirGrid or the ESB. Wind farm companies do not have the right to go into land. And this comes up in them running cables up along the road. If you own the land both sides of the road, they cannot run them up your land. But you have to take a court case, and everyone's afraid they'll go down on this. The land law is fairly well settled. We'll see, can we get barristers or whatever to advise and see how much it'll cost, and let them do it. But if you let them run up the road and they get 12 years there, they take over your piece of land under the road. If that road ever changed and it went back into the council pulled away, you own that land. Now there's somebody else there without your wishes. I mean, you wouldn't let them in on your own field. You wouldn't let someone into your, if you had a second house, and yet you let them go up the road. That's the law. Whether you want to believe it or whether you don't, that's up to people themselves. That's basically it. So, by the way, I'm just making this as an introduction. They're great videos if you're into it. I'll be doing one or two more. There could be maybe 13GH, maybe HI or whatever, IJK. They'll be there. If they're in the 13 series, they're on this subject. If you're not into that, forget about the 13 series. Go back to something else that's more interesting. All right. Our government are lawbreakers. They're taking away our rights. The EU is pushing this green stuff, but on the other hand, the treaties of the EU says this protection has to be there. They have to do it right. That'll do. Go and look at them videos then, please, and give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And it'll not come to you that simple. I'm just after having a long discussion with a man, a person down the country who says is question about this judgment C24/19. Certainly, you have to have an EIA for the guidelines. You have to have you have to have an SEA for any guidelines. You have to have an SEA for the wind farms. Well, then the question: what about the ones that's up already? And he read it to say that if the local law allows them to stay up, they can. But he read it wrong. We now agree I have it right. If the local law allows them to be kept, and they're needed urgently for the electricity to stop the lights going out in the member state, and that's the whole state, they can be kept for a while till the thing is put right by a new SEA, which they can't do because they won't be able to prove wind energy works, or by some amendment or some change, or stopping the whole project. They just can run on for a wee while. And that comes across from the nitrous directive, where the EU court was faced with shutting down, allowing filth into a river. If they uphold the law, the law was made to make them clean it up. The person that was made for took a case that there was no SEA and won. But the court did allow a little time to get the thing regularised to avoid the nitrates and the dirt going into the river. In the case of a wind farm or a pylon, that doesn't apply. That third part of it has nothing to do with the rest, because the electricity is not needed. We're running our electricity today in Ireland with no pylons, no north-south interconnector, so they can't argue that. So you're down to the basic thing, the basic programme. Yes, you can make them come out. How would you do it? Probably Section 160 of the Planning and Development Act 2000, and it'll be a tight fight. You're taking on the state. Let's see how they do. So I think that the day of putting up wind farms is kind of over. They're going to have to do the SE or not. But anyway, please, as I say again, look at them. I went to a lot of trouble making them. I can't guarantee everything's accurate. We'll be doing more teasing out, and as I see any corrections, I'll correct them. I can't take accountability for it. But you'll know if you look at them, and they're nearly an hour and a half. You'll know if you look at them where you stand with the pylons, and you'll have a good old start on it. And then we can talk about where you get lawyers or whatever. Somebody wants to go ahead. Maybe it'll do some good. At least if it doesn't and the pylons go up, people will understand that a fast one has been pulled on them. There was no legal justification for this, and that's another matter for another day. Right, we let you go, and we're 9 minutes. That's not so bad. So that's the story, lads. have a look. This is an introduction. This is like the beginning of a book. The bit on the front, the forward, or the list of chapters or subjects of the book or chapters. This is like the beginning of it, and that's all we can do. We'll see you then, and we'll see you back for something else. Thank you.